You know, the budget is the most important thing we do in the legislature.
A late night at the Capitol as House lawmakers battle over the state's budget.
I must respectfully ask that you vote no on this amendment.
A plan to provide health coverage to more uninsured Texans gets shot down, but the debate may not be over.
The Live Well Texas plan addresses a lot of concerns that people have had to expanding health care coverage.
We'll dig deeper into the debate and ahead to what's next. A push for police accountability stalls at the state capitol.
The fact is that some things we can't get through the system at this point in time.
We talked to a lawmaker behind the George Floyd Act about what could still move forward this session. Hello, and thank you for joining us for State of Texas. I'm Josh Hinkle. It's the most important job of every legislative session, passing the budget. House lawmakers moved ahead with their nearly $250 billion plan. As Wes Rappaport shows us, it came after hours of debate over a long list of amendments.
Budget night in the Texas House is different. Some lawmakers try to stick to simple math, others look elsewhere for support. Thursday night's debate was framed through the lens of an economy recovering from a pandemic.
While overall, you won't see many additional funding items adopted at this time, the committee had some very robust discussions, and our responsibility to support the state's education system and how to address the uncertainty we're facing this session given our current funding situation.
Lawmakers find themselves awaiting guidance from the feds on relief money to help in decision making, leading to tough conversations in the meantime.
Is it conceivable that that guidance will be available to where you and other appropriations leaders will have the ability to start making some of those decisions here between now and the end of the regular session?
So that's a complex question. I do think some of it, the answer is yes, but there will be other funds for which the answer may very well be no.
To ready the state for when that money does come, the House approved a measure for the state to send nearly $18 billion in federal aid directly to education.
The first round of federal dollars that we got, we actually supplanted state funds with that money. We want to make sure that doesn't happen this time.
They also approved an amendment to prevent public dollars to pay for private schools. I'm Wes Rappaport for State of Texas.
One hard-fought budget amendment aimed to expand Medicaid in Texas. Republican lawmakers shut down that amendment, but as Maggie Glenn reports, that does not mean the end of the expansion discussion this session.
For some mental health conditions that she lives with.
Lauren has taken care of her younger sister, Soraya, for years. Soraya has technically aged out of the Medicaid program after turning 19 this year, but the pandemic protections kept her covered.
Texas did not disenroll children who were eligible for coverage at the beginning of the public health emergency when they aged out.
When the public health emergency is over, Soraya will join 1.4 million Texans in the coverage gap. Those who don't meet income qualifications for Medicaid, but also don't qualify for Affordable Care Act subsidies and credits.
Right now, she is preparing to go to college in the fall. She's working part-time.
It's about time for us to cover the rest of the people who are not part of the ACA above 138% of the poverty level.
Historically, Republicans have been against Medicaid expansion, citing concern that expansion could end up costing the state more in the long run.
I must respectfully ask that you vote no on this amendment.
So far, however, 9 Republicans have signed onto a separate Medicaid expansion bill. It would maximize federal dollars already available to the state with precautions in place so the state wouldn't end up footing the bill.
The Live Well Texas plan addresses a lot of concerns that people have had to expanding health care coverage. It has a stopgap measure if the funding ever ceases at the federal level.
This month, the Biden administration denied the state's 1115 waiver. That funding agreement was meant as a safety net for states to transition to expanded Medicaid coverage after the Affordable Care Act passed in 2010. The waiver would have paid for care for uninsured and poor Texans. Now, Josh, that's also adding to Republicans taking a more serious look at Medicaid expansion this session.
Maggie, you said 9 Republicans signed on to the bill. If all Democrats were on board too, isn't that enough to get it through?
Josh, you're right. That is enough to get it passed on the floor, but first it has to actually make it to the floor. Right now, it's still awaiting committee assignment, and with 6 weeks left of session, it's a pretty tight time frame.
All right, Maggie, thank you very much. We'll keep watching. Lawmakers debated late into Thursday night on the list of nearly 250 budget amendments. Among those that passed include an amendment to ban school vouchers. Another amendment would defund the Texas Enterprise Fund, which is used to attract businesses to the state. The money would instead go toward property tax relief. Lawmakers also voted to require a special session to appropriate federal relief funding that comes after the regular session. The budget debate highlights the priorities of lawmakers from different parts of Texas. We spoke to two influential House lawmakers, one Democrat and one Republican. They shared insight on the differences and similarities they bring to the budget battle.
You know, the budget is the most important thing we do in the legislature. We've been working on this budget for over a year, and it's a big deal considering all that Texas has gone through over the last 16 months. We have to first and foremost make sure we're taking care of our health and safety of our communities and then our schools. I didn't vote for the budget, I think my first 2 sessions as a legislator. Why? Because our budget at that time underfunded our local public schools. This budget fully funds public schools as well as maintains the billions of dollars that we put in last session through HB 3. That's the #1 priority, not only for the appropriators, but for the Texas House. We have been saying that for years.
Of course, on top of the things that are unique to 2020 and 2021, you have some of the same old issues like having 150 House members with different needs in their districts all across the state, trying to make sure that their voices, the voices of their constituents, are heard in this budget writing process. One thing that always comes to mind is public safety and higher education, and so some areas that I'm focusing on specifically for my district are to make sure that state institutions, particularly our local University of Texas branch, UT Permian Basin, is getting the resources from the state that it needs so that they can continue to do the good work that they're doing at UTPB. But also in a place like the Permian Basin, we have tremendous needs with highway safety. And so we want to make sure that we have good roads, but we also want to make sure that we have an adequate amount of law enforcement so that not only do we have good roads, but we also have laws that are being enforced on those highways, particularly with big commercial motor vehicles. But we have to take what's good for the entire state of Texas while balancing these hyper-localized needs, and you hope that those hyper-localized needs also have a positive benefit for the state.
The Senate already passed its version of the budget. Key members from both chambers will meet to iron out the differences between the two versions before the session ends on May 31st. A state lawmaker works to push her plan to help save the lives of Texas mothers, the message she has for others at the Capitol. The ongoing push for police accountability faces obstacles at the Capitol, why some parts of the George Floyd Act may not get through the system this session.
It's not fair that we have to keep asking for justice, asking for answers, asking for change.
It's been a year since Vanessa Guillen vanished from Fort Hood, later to be found murdered. Now her family has a mission, how they're reaching out in Austin and Washington to get lawmakers to protect those who protect us.